They said the heavy giantess could never be loved, until the human called her perfect. The galaxy was wide, endless, and cold. Yet, on the fractured world of Climber 9, there lived a people larger than most species dared imagine. The Trellin Giantesses. They were warriors, builders, and guardians of their volcanic homeland. Their frames were tall as starship hangar doors, their muscles woven with density that made the ground quake beneath their tread. But they carried with them something heavier than stone or steel, a stigma that no heart from another race could ever embrace them. It was whispered across the interstellar lanes. The Trellin Giantesses are too heavy, too strong, too monstrous. No one could ever love such beings. Beginning the outcast giantess. Among the Trellin lived Vera, the daughter of a war matron. She was the tallest of her kin, towering above even the other giantesses, her frame dense enough to warp the docking scales when she tried aboard interstellar transports. Her skin was a dark, burnished copper, marked with glowing blue fissures that pulsed faintly with a mineral-rich blood unique to her species. Her eyes were pale silver, piercing but sad. Though revered in combat, she was shunned to home. Suitors among her own kind rejected her. "You are too much," one male Trellin had spat. "Too heavy for even a giant's arms." Others were kinder but distant. "No one will pair with you. Vera, you will fight for our people, but never will you find a bond." So she stopped asking. She became the solitary warrior of her tribe, watching her sisters laugh in the glow of courtship fires while she sat alone, her massive fingers digging grooves into the earth. The loneliness grew heavier than her colossal body. The human who fell from the sky. The day everything changed began with a fiery streak across Climber Ix's scarlet skies. A shuttle, broken and burning, crashed into the sulfur plains near the Trellin settlement. Warriors ran to see if the vessel carried raiders, but what emerged was no warband. Instead, staggering from the cracked hull, was a lone human man. His name was Elias Rourke, a freelance engineer from Earth. His ship had been caught in a gravity storm, tearing it from its course. Bruised, bloodied, but alive, he stumbled onto alien soil. The Trellin warriors surrounded him, massive spears aimed at his chest. To them, he looked fragile, laughably small, barely the size of a Trellin child. Some jeered. Others muttered about squashing him before he could bring trouble. But Vera stepped forward. "Stop," she commanded, her voice shaking the air. "He is no threat." The warriors laughed. "You pity him, outcast? What good is such a small thing?" Vera crouched, lowering her enormous form until her eyes met Elias's. He was trembling, but when their gazes locked, he managed a weak smile. "Thanks," he whispered hoarsely, "for not crushing me." Something strange stirred in Vera's chest. No one had ever thanked her before. Not like that, and certainly not with kindness in their eyes. Middle, two worlds colliding. The Trellin had no interest in the human. They left him in Vera's charge, mocking her for finding companionship in something so tiny. But Vera didn't mind. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She carried Elias in the cradle of her palm, careful not to harm him. He, in turn, marveled at her size, her strength, her presence. At first, he was intimidated, but as days passed, or replaced fear, she brought him food, chunks of volcanic fruit that he could barely finish. She crafted him a shelter from her spare armor plating, though he insisted he was more comfortable sleeping on her shoulder when the cold night swept across the plains. Conversations grew. "You must think me monstrous," Vera said one night, staring at the molten rivers in the distance. Elias laughed softly. "Monstrous? You carried me for miles without dropping me. You shielded me from that sulfur storm with your own body. Back on Earth, we call that heroic." Her glowing eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. "But I am too heavy. Too much for anyone," she whispered. Elias shook his head. "Heavy? Maybe. But you're strong in ways I'll never be. That doesn't make you unlovable. It makes you extraordinary." For the first time, the giantess's lips curled into a smile. The growing bond. Over weeks, Elias worked to repair a beacon from his broken ship, hoping to signal a passing vessel. Vera helped, following his instructions with delicate care despite her massive hands. He joked that she was the best assistant engineer he'd ever had. At night, when he grew cold, she would cup him gently in her hands, her body radiating warmth like a living hearth. And when nightmares woke him, he found comfort in her voice, deep, resonant, yet soothing. Their bond grew undeniable. The other Trellin whispered in disbelief. Some accused Vera of dishonoring her kind by keeping company with a human, but others began to watch quietly, wondering at the strange tenderness between the two. The test of fire. Peace never lasted long on Climber 9. Raiders, mercenaries from the Orion Syndicate, descended on the sulfur plains, seeking to capture Trellin minerals for profit, armed with plasma cannons and mechs. They struck the village without warning. The Trellin warriors roared into battle, but even their strength faltered against mechanized weapons. Vera fought at the front, her massive blade cleaving through steel. Elias, though small, refused to hide. He scrambled into the wreckage of a mech, hot-wiring its systems with frantic precision. As the battle raged, a Syndicate commander unleashed a seismic cannon. Its shockwave tore through ground, throwing Vera off balance. For a moment, she fell, her colossal frame crashing into the earth. "Vera!" Elias shouted. Without hesitation, he sprinted across the battlefield, dodging blasts, climbing rubble, until he reached her. To everyone's shock, the tiny human stood before the fallen giantess, arms spread wide as if daring the raiders to strike him. "Get away, Elias," she cried. "Not a chance," he yelled back. "I'm not letting them take you." That defiance sparked something primal in Vera. With a thunderous roar, she surged to her feet, blood and fire surging through her veins. Her blade cut down the Syndicates, mechs one by one, Elias feeding her tactical advice from the cockpit he'd hacked. Together, Giantess and human turned the tide of battle. When the dust settled, the raiders fled, their ships burning against the horizon. Ending, perfect as eyes. The Trellin gathered among the ruins, staring in disbelief. The outcast Giantess, once mocked, had saved them all, and beside her stood the fragile human, defiant and unbroken. That night, as the fires of victory burned, Elias approached Vera. She knelt, her massive frame lowering until her glowing eyes met his. "You risked everything for me," she said softly. He smiled. "You've been protecting me since the moment we met. It was my turn." Her heart thundered in her chest, heavier than any battle strike. "Elias, they say I am too heavy to be loved. Too much for anyone. But when I am with you, I feel lighter." The human reached out, his small hand brushing against the warm expanse of her finger. "That's because you're not too much, Vera. You're perfect, exactly as you are." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the crackle of fire. Then, slowly, the giantess smiled, a smile brighter than molten rivers. She lifted him, not as cargo, but as something infinitely precious. The tribe looked on, not with mockery this time, but with awe, for they saw what they had never believed possible. A bond that crossed not only sides but worlds, forged in fire, sealed with trust. Epilogue, beyond Climera. Weeks later, a passing freighter received Elias's repaired beacon. When offered a chance to return to the stars, he paused. He looked up at Vera, who stood silently behind him, eyes glimmering with a hope she dared not voice. Elias grinned. "Wherever I go, I want to be with her." The crew gawked at the idea of carrying a Trellin giantess aboard, but Elias didn't care. Together, they would find a way, modifying cargo holds, reinforcing decks, building a new life among the stars. Because love was not measured by weight or size or the expectations of others. It was measured by the courage to see someone as they truly were, and to call them perfect.